Hi, welcome to Walchet Reviews, where we look at different legal tech products in the market and provide you our insights and analysis on the same. In today's episode, we're looking at LegalSifter Review by LegalSifter. I find it most useful to understand what the product is by asking a couple of questions. So let's start with the most basic one. What is the product? The product is a tool that helps you review contracts during the negotiation phase, essentially before you sign the agreement, using AI and a library of advice. So the next logical question, who is providing this advice? If you buy the Essential Edition, the advice is being curated by the LegalSifter team, which is led by Ken Adams, who is a contract drafting expert. You can also upgrade and get the Professional Edition, where you can customize and put in your own advice. So you also get access to LegalSifter's curated advice, but you can also customize that if you're on the Professional Edition. What is the type of review that it provides? Let's take a look at this, and it'll be easier for me to explain. So as you can see over here, let me move this down. I've got two headings under which issues have been highlighted, missing and found. Looking at the example of indemnification and bad faith carve-out, it's telling me that if I'm the supplier and I'm required to indemnify the buyer, it's good practice for me to include a carve-out if the buyer has acted fraudulently. So it's given me the rationale for why it believes this clause should be in the agreement. It's presently missing, but it's highlighting it of why it should be in the agreement, and it's giving me a sample clause. So missing is essentially all of the clauses that LegalSifter believes should be in the agreement, but is not in the agreement. Under the heading of found, and let's take the example of limitation of liability and cap on liability. Here it's identified the clause which highlights limitation of liability within this agreement. And again, I have gotten a rationale for the clause in the context of a EULA as well as a sample clause. And this is something that it has found in the agreement, and it has highlighted that to me. What are the types of documents that you can review? There is a list of 14 document types, and you can see the list over here. And it's a broad range, including software, which includes the EULA and the SaaS agreements, services, goods, leases, confidentiality, or your NDAs. And it's all types: receiving, mutual, disclosing, information security, privacy, and GDPR. And I've even got a generic boilerplate review, which means that even if it's a document which is not within this list of 14, I can review all of the boilerplate provisions using the LegalSifter tool, and that includes waiver, assignment of rights, notices, etc. What is a sifter? Maybe we should have started off with this question first. According to LegalSifter, a sifter is a piece of software that has been trained to read text and look for a specific concept. Now, this concept is a legal concept. It could be a definition or a clause. So for instance, for indemnity, you could have the definition of indemnity as well as the clause, and both are legal concepts that the sifter will search for. The software has been trained on a set of sifters that are applicable to these 14 document type sets, but it also learns on experience, and we will get into that in a bit. So let's talk about the pricing. There are two offerings from LegalSifter, Essentials and Professional. In the Essentials edition, everything is off the shelf and you get no customization. In the Professional edition, you can customize your document type, the sifter settings, and the advice that is provided for each of the agreements. Let's take a look at what this pricing looks like. As you can see, the pricing is not dependent on the number of users, but it's based on the number of sifts of the document. And obviously, the Essentials edition is more economical than the Professional edition because the Professional edition allows you a lot more features in terms of the customizations that you can do. If you're looking to choose between the two, you will need to identify how much customization or whether you require any customization at all for your review, as well as estimate the number of sifts you're going to do on your contracts. And basis that, you can choose either a 1-year term or a 2-year term. Obviously, as you choose a longer year term, your price per sift goes down. And if you don't require any customization, then obviously the Essential edition makes more sense. And now let's get into what are the things that I like. One of the things that I really like about the LegalSifter tool is the Sifter Library Guide. A lot of AI tools will tell you how the algorithm will automatically find what you're looking for and highlight it to you. And while that is true, it's interesting that LegalSifter actually shows you how the sifters have been trained to extract those tools. So there's a lot of transparency in how the tool has been trained. And it gives me a lot of context to understanding why a tool has identified a legal concept within the document and why it may have missed it in some other documents. So if we take a look at the example of acceptance criteria over here, the sifter searches for a statement of acceptance criteria for purchased goods and deliverables, as well as I've got a couple of examples of clauses that I know the sifter has been trained on. This is helpful because if it misses a sifter, if it misses a particular concept in a document, I can look at the sifter library and understand that it has been trained on this, so maybe that's why it may have missed that. For instance, with the example of event of default, I can see that the concept event of default is from the perspective of a payment obligation, because I can see all of the examples that has been trained under, and that's very useful for me to know. Oh, and I should also mention that only users of the professional edition can access the sifter library. The second thing that I like about LegalSifter Review is the sifter settings and the amount of customization offered in the sifter settings. So you can see over here that I've got all of the sifters, and I've got, again, the headings of found and missing. And against each of these clauses or concepts, I can say, if you find this clause in the agreement, ignore it, display it, or flag it to me. And if it's missing, I want it to be, let me turn on this edit button, and then you can actually see me make some changes, and we'll go to indemnification. Let's go to indemnification and the obligation to indemnify. And I can say over here that if you find this clause, flag it to me, or not so important for me, maybe we'll just display it. But if it is missing, definitely warn me or completely ignore it. So depending on the internal priority of my company, I can set these settings. And all of this advice that I see over here is completely customizable. Out of the box, like I mentioned, with the Essential Edition, you get the content that has been curated by the LegalSifter team. But if I want, and I have a specific clause that I want to insert of my own, I actually can do that through this setting. As we discussed earlier, only users of the Professional Edition can customize their sifter settings. The next thing that I really like about this tool is the Train the Sifter option. Now, there may be some instances where you feel that the sifter has incorrectly identified a clause. Now, let's click on this Train the Sifter, and I can actually say that this is the limitation of liability clause, but maybe it wasn't identified. So I can click on Train the Sifter, and I can say that this is the limitation of liability cap on liability clause. And the problem is that it should have flagged it, but it missed it, or it should not have flagged it because this is not a limitation of liability cap on liability clause. And then I submit that to LegalSifter, and they will review it and come back. So if in any event the LegalSifter tool has missed out any clause, you have the option to actually train it going forward. And that's super useful. The other thing that I find really useful is within the 14 document types, there are different perspectives of review that have been provided. So for instance, I can review the agreement as a buyer or a supplier, and there are different sifters that I can customize for these two perspectives. So if I'm a buyer of services, I obviously want an indemnification clause and I want less carve-outs within that. But if I'm a supplier of services, I want less indemnification clauses and more carve-outs in that. So you can see that as my perspective changes, the kind of review that I want to do in the agreement as well changes. So the fact that you've got these two different perspectives built into the LegalSifter tool makes it super useful. I can also do an in-depth or a quick review, which essentially means if I'm going into a meeting and I don't have the time to I don't have the time to look at the document in detail, I can do a quick overview and then quickly see what are the issues in the agreement and walk into that meeting and highlight those. You also have an attorney version and a non-attorney version. And obviously the non-attorney version review is less detailed than the attorney version review. And if you really like the tool, but you don't have the manpower to actually conduct the review, you can also use LegalSifter Concierge, which is the next thing that I find really useful, where LegalSifter or one of its implementation partners will provide you the service of reviewing the contracts using the LegalSifter tool. What are the things that I think the tool can do better? I'm going to start with these 14 document types, and we've talked about this list before. And while I know LegalSifter is continuously adding to this list, I would say that if your document does not squarely fall within this list of 14, it may not be as useful. Of course, LegalSifter does say that you can, if you're in the professional edition, you can customize your own document type. But as you saw in the Sifter library, each of the sifters have been trained within the context of those 14 documents. So the event of default clause is in the context of a payment obligation, and it may not hold good in a shareholders agreement event of default. So I know that even if I'm looking to build a new document type, it has to be within the same context as the existing 14. I can't necessarily use the LegalSifter tool to review a shareholders agreement. LegalSifter also does offer clients the option to build out your own customized sifter, but it comes at a cost of $2,500 per sifter. The second thing that I want to highlight is that if you are a company and you're looking for an end-to-end contract management system, this may not be it. As I mentioned earlier, this is a product that helps you review contracts before you sign the agreement during the negotiation phase. So if you're looking for something to manage the contract during its entire life cycle, that would be a contract lifecycle management tool, and that's a separate tool altogether. But I have to mention that LegalSifter does have tie-ups with a couple of CLM tools or contract lifecycle management tools. And these include ContractPod AI, AO Docs, and Contract Safe. And here too, LegalSifter offers a concierge service where they will resell the CLM tool along with the AI-based review platform. So from your perspective, you get an end-to-end solution. The third thing that I must point out is your requirements for jurisdiction-specific advice. As I mentioned earlier, the content has been curated by the LegalSifter team, and in most cases will be fairly universally applicable. However, if you have any local law regulations that require you to insert specific language in a clause, you would need to do that on your own, as the advice provided by LegalSifter is fairly generic and universal and not jurisdiction specific. So this is the other thing to point out, that if you're a multinational company, you're looking to do this review across jurisdictions, bear in mind that you will need to insert your own jurisdiction specific advice. The last thing that I want to mention is the pricing. Now, I know there are several LegalSifter customers that find the pricing extremely attractive, but I do want to point out that for clients in emerging economies, where they also do have access to quality manpower at economical costs, you may want to do a cost comparison analysis between the tool, the cost of the tool, as well as the cost of that manpower doing that manual review for you. Who is this more suited for? If you're a company that uses agreements within this 14 document type set, then it's a great fit because of the number of permutation combinations offered by the tool, buyer-specific, supplier-specific, in-depth review, quick review, as well as attorney and non-attorney review. It's pretty comprehensive and you're covered. Additionally, it's built for companies that have their own policy, but are not often looking at documents which are their templates, but are looking on documents sent by the third party, or what we like to call third-party paper. So if you have your own policy and you're trying to review agreements on third-party paper, this is perfect because it's been built specifically for that purpose. The last thing that I want to say is the beauty in the level of customization. So if you do take the professional edition and you customize your advice and you customize the sifter settings, you can totally build this out and have like a specific NDA for APAC receiving, NDA for APAC mutual. You could have different sifter settings for the EMEA NDAs, different sifter settings for the APAC receiving and mutual. So there's a ton of customization on offer, and this would be super useful to a lot of multinational companies. What are my final thoughts? So LegalSifter does offer a trial, and they will offer a small amount of customization during the trial period so that you can see and assess the capability of the tool. So do the trial, run it on your documents, and see whether it's a good fit for your organization. If your organization falls within that list of 14 document types and it works well in agreements, it's a great fit. This concludes our analysis of LegalSifter review by LegalSifter. If you're interested in knowing more, please write into us at priyadarshini@walchet.com. If you are interested in purchasing LegalSifter software, you can directly do so. You may quote this coupon code WalchetLS to receive a discount. If you would like us to review any legal tech products, please feel free to write in. We'd be happy to take a look at it. I must add that Walchet gets no commercial benefit if you sign up using the coupon code. All of the benefits accrue directly to the end customer. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.